أحييكم مرة أخرى.
Welcome once again, and we move to the second session of this symposium, and we will give the floor to Mr. Otto, and we will talk about the economic and investment opportunities. On my right is Dr. Nasser Hasan Al-Sheikh. He's an Emirati economist, and he was in charge of the Chamber of Commerce of Dubai. And also on my left, Dr. Otto Wiesheu, president of the German Arab Friendship Association and former Bavarian Minister for Economic Affairs, Infrastructure, Transport and Technology. According to the norms of hospitality, Mr. Nasser, that we give the priority to Dr. Otto. It's your floor.
I think it's better the moderator will be Mr. Hinterdobler. Mr. Hinterdobler is in the Bavarian government. He is a member in the staff of the Bavarian Prime Minister. He is responsible for all foreign questions in politics and economic questions.
No politics here, only economy and trade.
Not now, but he is responsible for politics and economic questions in the Bavarian States Council. But now he will have a discussion to the economic questions. He is responsible for the international relations and has a special interest for Near East and the Gulf states. He had a good network in the Bavarian government, and therefore he is able to translate what we are discussing into political actions. He is in charge very well. I am out of order. Therefore,
so,
better
please, can you bring a chair, please? One more chair here. Welcome, Mr. Michael. And so, the first speech will be for you in this session.
Excellencies, Dr. Al-Ketbi, thank you very much. Dear colleagues from Germany and the UAE, it's a pleasure for me and an honor and a privilege to be able to open up this second panel on this morning, deepening one aspect that has already been discussed in the first panel, which is, of course, the economic relationship and the energy question. The strategic importance of this relationship has already been outlined by Ambassador Mützelburg and others. And I would like to go, if you allow me, in this opening remarks into some details of it, but to start by saying how important this relationship is in these times. Germany and the United Arab Emirates have entertained a strategic partnership since a number of years, and we are probably now entering a new phase, not only due to the change of government in Germany and due to some major events that have been called upon earlier, but the overall economy and the landscape of the economic development worldwide is probably changing now. And we have to find our new spots. So I welcome very much this opportunity to discuss today how such an economic strategic partnership between UAE and Germany could look like. Germany, of course, as we've discussed earlier, is reorienting its economy, and especially also in the energy sector. Energy sector will be, and there's a reason for it why it's on the panel, will be certainly one of these important things. But it's very important to know, and I think the message today also from the German Arabic Friendship Society is that we try to have a larger look at the economic perspective. So we don't look at your country as a gas station for Europe. We have never done this, and we will not do this in the future. But the goal is more, of course, to create and to enhance a partnership of equals that is characterized by sustainability, so a long-term investment into this partnership. Of course, we think that Germany has a lot to offer in the field of practical, innovative, applied sciences, in know-how transfer, in industrialization, and maybe also technical and vocational training. And it's very interesting when you come here in the region, it's always striking how young, dynamic, and tech-oriented you are here, and your society is, and how fast developing. The dynamism of of your country and the whole region is always striking when you come from Germany. You know, there's a saying that maybe in Europe, and especially for Germany, the present is always the end of our past. Here you have the impression the present is always the beginning of a future. And of course you have now 50 years, like you told earlier, Dr. Nasser, that is of your statehood, and you're entering a new phase in the next years. And we're looking with large interest in the ideas, how are you going to develop your economy, maybe a post-fossil fuel economy, and how are you diversifying and your strategic investments into important fields where we think Germany can be an interesting partner for you. And this is maybe a topic we can talk about. So it's really important to promote and deepen these economic relations and on a long term. And maybe we can discuss the future and some developing ideas where you are going. If you allow me, I will start out with telling you a little bit about Bavaria's specific interests and what is Bavaria and why are we here and why are we happy to be invited to this forum today. In these very days, we are also part of this movement of closer cooperation between your government and our governments. We had a number of visits coming in also to Munich, and we were also preparing a visit of our Minister President to the UAE earlier this year, some weeks ago, just before Ramadan. And I thank again very much the Ambassador and Chargé d'Affaires Carsten Wilms for the cooperation we had here in developing a program where we want to enhance cooperation. Focused on energy, yes, but also in a broader perspective. Bavaria, what is Bavaria and where is Bavaria? For me, it's fantastic today because not only I'm coming to the Emirates, but it's also for me a trip to Berlin at the same time, because I'm meeting a lot of, I'm entering here a group of Berlin experts, which I'm also happy to get to know, who are very experts on this region. And but allow me for you, but also for my German colleagues, maybe to speak a little bit about what we are up to here and what we think could be a potential for cooperation. Our belief is, strategically, if you look at Europe, you cannot ignore Germany. But we also think if you look at Germany, you cannot ignore Bavaria. Bavaria is part of the strong south of Germany. If you historically and geographically, you draw a line between Berlin and Rome and between Paris and Vienna, the intersection will be in Bavaria. I checked it on Google. It's true. I'm telling this a long time, even before Google existed, maybe, but it's true. And if you do it on Google Maps by road, it will be Nuremberg, the birthplace of our Minister President, and a historically important city of trade. And also, I checked it also if you do it, Luftlinie, as the crow flies. So really. And it almost ended in Austria, but then I found it intersects in Eckelham in Niederbayern, which is the birthplace of my grandmother. So, and also, when you look at geography, you imagine the European Union geographically, and you cut it out like in a jigsaw puzzle, and you balance it, the cardboard on a pencil. The pencil would be stuck in Bavaria. So the geographical center of the European Union is in Bavaria, in the south of Germany. And it's a region where I would say historically the German world is also connected to the eastern parts with the Slavic-speaking world, and to the south with the Roman languages. So Rome and also the Latinity that is there in Bavaria, it's there. So it's also culturally a mixture between the German way of thinking, but there is also a certain drop of Latin and Roman thinking there, which also makes it a little bit milder. It mitigates a little bit the German aspects of it, and makes doing business maybe a little bit easier than elsewhere. This is what we think. Also, I mean, the Roman Catholicism, which is also part of our belief, and as I might add here for the German colleagues, as recent history shows, it is easier for a Bavarian to become Pope in Rome than Chancellor in Berlin. So that's certainly a way to put it. And so Bavaria has, and I must really say what a privilege it is to be in the presence of President Dr. Otto Wiesheu here, and I've had the honor and privilege to work for him in our government as early as 20 years ago. He's certainly one of the figures that stands for continuity in a Bavarian policy to develop Bavaria what it is today, coming from an agricultural state that has skipped the first industrial revolution, more or less. That was never part of this coal and steel Germany, but then after Second World War going to the new economy, and was then the new economy, a knowledge-based economy, and has developed through a lot of instruments Bavaria to what it is today, an innovation-driven region, exportation-driven region with a strong regional identity. So something that is three valuable assets in globalization. You have the innovation aspect, the exportation aspect, but you try to maintain your own set of values and your own identity, which, madam, you also maintained, which is important for your country. And you reminded us of not to judge you by our values. And so this also is a point where we think that you can have a better condition, better entertaining, better relations when everybody knows where you stand historically. Of course, this is also changing, but this is certainly a point now where we, as part of this German economy and this even stronger European society and European politics, have to find a new way and to get into new partnerships. The core belief is that Europe and Germany and Bavaria can only strive when the Euro-Atlantic integration is intact. So of course, our core market and our core interest is to have a functioning European Union economically, and we have to have this strategic partnership with the United States, keep that intact. I think this is the basis for everything. But looking beyond that, what some could call maybe the Western societies and the Western economies, it's very important now to have new partnerships. The question of China is up on the table. How much can we, what is China for us and the Chinese market, and how we are going to deal with that economically and strategically. And the question of other markets are up, like Africa, for example. Is Africa going to be an interesting region for us that can be developed economically speaking? And in all of this, the interesting question for us today maybe is to know, where are you in this picture? Where is your place in your economic policy and in your economic strategy? Where do you stand between all of this? And where are you going to be oriented, and how much is Europe in your heart and your minds? We believe that we have a strategic interest in this special world order to forge an even closer relationship. And I'm also here today to show that, especially our administration here in the south of Germany, we are ready to invest more in this relationship and to go on at this path. Maybe let me touch on 4 or 5 subjects where we think a deepening of the economic relationship could be interesting. Of course, we're an industrial state, so the future development of industry is of an utmost importance. How can we keep the industrial core of Germany, which is largely in the south of Germany, and make it keep it alive? You all know the Siemens and the BMWs and the car makers and the manufacturing sector. That is really the most important thing to us. How can we transform it to the new sustainable economy? For this, we need the energy sector to be intact, and this recent crises have certainly unveiled some deficiencies in the German energy policy and the German way of thinking about energy. And it's very clear that we are looking at you, of course, also in a strategic partnership. I think the energy panel later will go deeper into that. And Bavaria, this was the intended message of our minister president when coming here, would be very interested to have this hydrogen partnership expanded and to do this very closely. For this, we are in close contact also with ADNOC and Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber and his team, where we try to have a new partnership, an industrial partnership. I would like to mention names of companies with Bavarian background, like Siemens and Siemens Energy, like MAN, like Linde Gas, and also interesting startups like Hydrogenius, who are developing new technologies to store and transport hydrogen, which will be very important in the future, and which are spin-offs of the Bavarian university system. So overall, the decarbonization of the industry and the economy is a goal that Europe has set itself, and we need to work on it. Europe has pledged to become carbon neutral by 2050, and we try to do it even earlier than that. And we know that this is something that can only be done through an intensive cooperation, and if we do it, everybody in line with the Paris agreements that we have all agreed to. The health sector is another sector where we should think about. We have a good tradition in cooperation in health and healthcare and research in that direction. And Siemens, again, is one of the major players here with a medical valley in Erlangen and are always open for cooperation. Food and food security is another sector where we all also try to enhance the cooperation with your country, and I would also applaud the initiatives of Madame Al-Mahiri, who is not only special representative for your country, for Germany, but also responsible for food technology and food security. We have major important research facilities and universities in Weihenstephan and others who would be ready to cooperate. And I would also like to remind that the World Food Programme, which is an important and even more important international organization, entertains an innovation center in Munich on food and food security, which has become a major hub. And we can also look at how we could cooperate with the World Food Programme in innovation for food security all over the world. Aerospace is also a sector that should be mentioned. Bavaria has recharged its initiatives to invest in the aerospace sector with new campuses and a number of professorships where we try, together with the industry, I know that Airbus Industries is very active also in your country, try to have a better overall industrial cooperation. Bavaria as a government, of course, is not a company. We don't sell things. We don't buy energy. We don't sell energy. We don't do this. We're an administration. But the idea is to create an environment, especially through investing into R&D, research and development, into the sector. Just to give an example, the government has launched a new high-tech agenda where only in artificial intelligence 1,000 new professorships will be created, and only in Bavaria alone, which is one of the 16 lenders, and which, of course, where the aim is to have with artificial intelligence, so with working with big data that come out of the industry, that come, for example, out of the car industry, and come out of the financial industry, and come out of the insurance industry. You use the big data and you transform into new industrial models that are cross-industrial. So this is a new strategy that we would very much welcome your input on, and where we could certainly see that you would be interesting partners to invest in that, given also your young and tech-savvy population and your openness to these things. So these are some items and maybe some avenues that could be explored, and this is only one example out of Bavaria. Of course, I'm always proud to talk about my home region, but it is very clear that Germany overall is investing very much in this direction, and this could be an overall opportunity, I think, not only for us. The question that we have to ask, if we agree to these strategic goals, are all the instruments in place? So do we have the necessary means to promote this? And I know that, again, your economy is organized differently, and your state is organized differently. Your relationship between government and businesses is a different model than we entertain. But it can certainly speak for our government and for our Minister President that we're always welcome to use the partnership that we entertain with our businesses and with our business associations to make contact. And we have especially one instrument here, and which is, I would say, the strategic dialogue that we have here. And I would like to underline the presence of Karin Zangel, who is here today. Maybe, Karin, you could present yourself to the audience. She's our special Bavarian representative, working inside the Chamber of Commerce here, the Außenhandelskammer, the AHK, for the region. And you're also, Karen, you're also in the energy dialogue, so it's an important match that we have people here who try to do this. Because ultimately, and I'd like to come back what you said earlier, Madam, you said it's a people-to-people thing. And the nicety about it is that you are very small in number compared to other countries, but you're very big in leverage, what you can achieve. And so I think the importance of keeping up this people-to-people and relationship is all the more important. And I think, just to say, for Bavarians, I can say we can maybe offer something also on a human scale, to keep it on a human scale, but leverage with worldwide influence. Maybe this is an idea for the future. Thank you very much for the opportunity to open up this panel.
Thank you, Excellency, thank you. The second intervention for Dr. Nasser, Sheikh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Guten Morgen. I'll speak in English if you don't mind. Well, I think it's always hard and difficult to come after capable speakers, because they don't leave you much to talk about. So thank you, all your excellencies, for that. I will take just a few more minutes, and there will be no structure, just snapshots of various things that would give a glimpse of where our economic partnership can go from here. And unfortunately, whoever has dealt with economic policy knows that it cannot be looked at without being politically aware of what's going on. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if it's by coincidence, but you come here today, and Dr. Ebtesam mentioned it. That's 50 years of relationships between the two countries. But the thing is, I mean, the UAE was incorporated in December 1971, 6 Emirates. A month later, the 7th Emirate joins. And 4 months later, there is German representation in the country. So, for you, I mean, for our German friends who do not are not aware of the Bedouin culture, that means quite a lot for us. you know, to believe in this country that was just an infant, you know, 4 or 5 months old. And you know, from there, I mean, of course, I mean, we were busy, you know, the let's say the first generation, then the second generation, putting this country together, establishing it on you know 7 emirates that decided it's better to be in one union, you know, and you have that federation thinking, you know, experience. It was, you know, a couple of GDP-wise, it was a couple of, you know, tens of billions. Today we're talking about, you know, a country which has an economy that surpasses $400 billion in GDP. And that's in 50 years. And we managed to create what you see today. Throughout these 50 years, today, Germany stands, I mean, the UAE is the, as Dr. Ebtesam mentioned, I mean, the UAE is the #1 Arab market for Germany. Just in 2021, I think there was growth of 10%. It reached $9.5 billion. Is that enough? Personally, I don't think so. You know, I think the potential is much higher than that. If everyone talks about China being the, let's say, the factory of the world, we all know for a fact that Germany is the center of industrial excellence throughout the world. You know, this is where innovation comes. So I think there's so much room for growth between the two countries. And I will urge you not to look at our. Okay. I will urge you not to look at the UAE number-wise. I mean, you said we are small in number, but big in leverage. Because when you look at the role of the UAE, of course, I mean, we had our 50 years, and in December there were the announcement of our goals for the next 50 years. You know, we hope that we will live to see those. But I mean, it will be the next generation. But the UAE is very active in the region. Okay, so it's not about only our progress, but we are deeply involved in the progress of Egypt, and the progress of a number of countries in the region. Okay, and we're always hopeful. I mean, it was mentioned a few times that maybe the Ukrainian conflict, was a wake-up call for Europe, that war can happen at any place. But in our case, for about 50 years, we have been living in chaos, around us. Yet we managed to create that or establish that oasis where we still see development going on. So even when we look at the past 2 years, as we were fighting COVID, and I think the state has done a great job doing that. We were still we did not neglect our development plans too. We still managed to launch the Hope mission to Mars, and we have done a number of things in the middle of the pandemic. So going forward, I think do not look at the UAE only. Look at its influence in the region. Okay, we are a small country, no doubt. We try as much as we can to be, the perfect neighbor that does not get into your business and so on. But unfortunately, in the past 10 years, we had to play a role that we're not comfortable with, but we had to play it. And now with the announcements that were made, that it's all de-escalation, it's all about economic prosperity, not only for us but for the region, because we know for a fact that if there is no prosperity in the region, we will be limited in our prosperity too. Okay, so I do not want to dive deep into the in the political side to it. I'm not an expert in that. I mean, there are many people who are much more capable than me at that. Now, just a few days ago, for example, when you talk about industrial, German industrial know-how, just a few days ago, I mean, there was that coalition that was announced between the UAE, Jordan, and Egypt. And the focus there is industrial. So we are going forward. I mean, we are trying different coalitions that will benefit the region. Of course, I mean, it has to benefit us too. But we're looking at the region's benefit. So along the way, we will be testing things. And again, coming after capable speakers, I have to repeat certain things. I heard, a comment where, this is, a make it or break it moment. And I think in true partnerships, there are no make it or break it. You come and you across problems, issues, you have to acknowledge them, but in a true partnership, you have to look for a way out. Okay, so I mean, along the way, we will have issues, but I think any issue is can be resolved. I think again, you talk about Bavaria, I'll talk about the UAE. I think looking at the GCC as a bloc, I think UAE represents the perfect economic partner for any global powerhouse that has aspirations in the region. Yes, today, our trade is at 9.5 billion, but we have much more to do. One of the things that was announced in December, eight markets were identified as strategic markets for the UAE. This will be revised, no doubt. One of them was Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has its own issues after that. But among those are Turkey, Israel. We already signed with India, which is a huge market. So this is a perfect place even for German companies to come, and this is the springboard for the region. I will just leave it there, and open it to the floor.
Thank you, Nasser. My intervention here that as a student of political science, that it is both economy and politics should go, that either economy pave the way for a good political relation, or even sometimes a good political relation, it leads to a good economic relation, especially in the case of Germany and UAE. Both of them have a good potential. You mentioned that we are a small country. We admit. We call ourselves that we are middle power more, rather than, small countries has challenges, okay? How to be survival, especially in a region full of conflicts, crisis, war, and to achieve what we achieved. And without vision, without a will, without wise and good leadership, you cannot achieve what you achieve. If it's to oil, there are many. In our neighborhood, in our region, they are also oil producer countries. But look what they are now in terms what model they can give. UAE can give a model for a power, a middle power, in terms politically and economically. It's a model for the future, for the whole region. I'll stop here and I open for the discussion. Please don't forget to put your name like that, those whom they want to intervene or wants to invest in economy in Bavaria or in any way. People are, Dr. Fatma, you don't have something? You are an economist.
Thank you very much for the speaker for this valuable information that provided. And I think there are a lot of opportunities available for both countries. As it's known, UAE is an open economy that depends on investment from all over the world, and it provide the support to all type of investment here. And I think there are a lot of opportunities available in this regard, relating to the energy as well as to other activities in the countries. It was mentioned that the knowledge-based economy, Germany is a knowledge-based economy, and this is one of the strategic option, the strategic priority that has been in the UAE strategy. We are moving toward economics-based economy, and all our strategic options are available in this regard. And I think this is where we should build on, and we should build our strategic options in this regard. There are a lot of activities, there are a lot of opportunity that is available, and I think what we are looking for is a strategic relation built on strategic opportunities for both countries, and not only the relation that is existed because of the needs, and then after that it will vanish. This is what we hope that we will attain. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fatma. Cynthia?
I have a question to Dr. Sheikh or everybody who wants to pick it up. Could you please elaborate on what do you think is the strategic advantage? No, sorry, let me rephrase. In which way is a German, Bavarian, European economic partner better or worse than a Chinese counterpart specifically? Thank you.
We'll answer this question, then we open the floor again.
Okay, well, China was mentioned a few times, and I think it goes, or let's say this is the way we feel, you know, Germany in general, and Germans, you know, what we like about them, they're straightforward, they're hardworking, they're direct, they're not cunning. So I mean, all ticks all the boxes. So that you know, the chemistry part of any relationship is important too. Okay, so nothing will be said just to please us, you know, and that's, you know, honesty in any relationship is important. China for us, I mean, it's been mentioned a few times, and in the past decade or 2 decades, if you look at most countries in the world, and you look at the number one trading partner, it will be China, you know, and they managed to do that, you know, and that's a fact, that's a reality. So China is an important partner for us too. But when I look at, you know, again, Africa was mentioned, you know, and when you look at countries, let's say the GCC bloc, and or even if you take it a bit wider, the UAE is the number one investor from the region in Africa. We have, you know, very old relationships there, And I think, again, it will be biased, but I think we are the best partner to tackle Africa. And if you're talking about China, you have to talk about Africa, because there's Chinese dominance in Africa, and I think this is what the U.S. and Europe is waking up to find now. So there should be, I think there should be a lot of investments going to Africa too, and it can be co-investments. We know the continent quite well, and I'm not talking about governments, about operating companies, on the ground in Africa. So yes, I mean, we will have that relationship with China and so on. But I think for us, we know that also Germany is a center of excellence, as we said. I mean, when it comes to industrial know-how, when it comes to new technologies, on a number of aspects, and the role of, I mean, it was again discussed earlier. If Germany was important before, all indicators say that Germany will be more important in the future. Okay, so being a regional player, I mean, whatever you see around you in the UAE, it's not built for the UAE economy, it's built for the regional economy. So if we have our aspirations to upgrade that, then a healthy, progressive relationship with Germany is very important for us, and I think it's very important for Germany too.
Thank you, Nasser. Before I give you, Sebastian, the floor, I just want also to add, because it has been raised always, not only by the German, by the American, by the British, whoever visited me raising this question. Well, you have to know something about UAE. UAE believed in diversifying its partnership. Now we are talking economy. It's also, wherever I go in Europe, I see the Chinese are there. Okay, now we'll talk about COVID, of course. Okay, they're everywhere. And the debate also, I was in it between what the American raising the same question for the Eastern Europe. And the answer was from their side, okay, when we compare our relation with China and US, that when we ask, this is an ex-president, she was talking, when she asked to see the American president, it takes months and months and might be not answered. Okay, but if she asks to see Jinping, second day she gets the answer. In terms of the economic aids also, if they are asking the American or European, it takes time. But with the Chinese, immediately they get it. So also you and the American are losing your allies, okay? Because why these countries pivot towards China? What happened? You have to ask yourself this question. For UAE, diversifying its strategic partnership, this is the priority of its foreign policy. Okay? And it gains from that. Maybe you don't like it, but it's about exchanging interest, and it's benefiting from that. It got, maybe you didn't like the UAE stand towards Ukrainian crisis in the UN Security Council, but the exchange was that the Russian stand by UAE in designating Houthi as a terrorist group, while the American did not. And so in the international relation, it's about interest. There is no emotions in that. Where is your interest? You go by your interest. Okay, now, let's also mentioning that on the security side, of course, we don't depend on the Chinese. Of course, the American, the European are the guarantor for our security. it's not either or, cannot be either or. And should be also, it's not you are liberal in your ideas, should be in your policies, and give the other nations their choices, whom to choose, where it's their interest. Sebastian, sorry.
Thank you very much. I have two questions. The first one is related a little bit to a discussion that has evolved in the last couple of years, that on the Arab Peninsula, between specific Gulf monarchies, there has also been emerged kind of an economic rivalry or competition, which as a consequence could also maybe hamper the image of the whole market here for trade or investment. I just wanted to know how you see it, not only you, Ebtesam or Nasser, but also the others from the UAE. And my second question is a little bit related to my passion for sport and football, but also with regards to economics. So sport, and specifically football investment, has also become a very relevant part of the diversification portfolio, not only of the UAE, for instance, the investment in Manchester City and others, but also of other Gulf states. I was wondering if there is any interest also from UAE side to engage more with Germany in this regard, maybe not only on a professional level, but also when it comes to working more closely together with on a community sports level, etc., etc. So maybe we can discuss it also in the last session of today, but I just wanted to raise attention for that, specifically when it comes to sports investments now in the economic session. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to answer? Would you like to answer something before I go to Nasser? Bern, please. Bern.
Well, sorry, I did not really want to comment on what Sebastian just said, but I had two comments and perhaps suggestions with respect to what Mr. Nasser has said in his introduction. You were so kind to say that you regard Germany as a center of industrial excellence. Well, I also tend to believe that we are that still, you know, but if you are not paying attention and if you're not working harder, we may lose that. But in that respect, I just wanted to refer to two elements of that industrial excellence, which I think should perhaps offer us also sectors of cooperation. Why are we relatively strong in that field? I think there are basically two factors. One is education, especially vocational training, vocational education, where I certainly see a field of cooperation between the UAE and the Gulf states and Germany. But also, of course, the very close link which we have established, especially between the technical universities, and Bavaria is really an example in that respect, and industry. It's not only about, you know, basic research, but it's about adaptation, implementation into projects. We are not as strong in that respect as perhaps the Americans are, but we are certainly on the way towards it. And in that respect, I would say Bavaria is really a model case. And the second reason why we are relatively strong in the industrial sector is most of German industry are SMEs, small and medium-sized countries, which are, amongst others, of course, also the biggest employers in Germany. And I understand that the UAE is just developing a new vision for the strengthening of its SME sector. I would also suggest that in that context we could find certainly contact points, we could certainly establish relations in which both societies can profit from their experiences and their developments. One third aspect I would also like to introduce here, also because we were talking about China, the way in which China is reaching out towards Africa, for example. I think the UAE has also provided a very good example of triangular, trilateral cooperation. So we should not only focus, I think, on our bilateral relationship, we should also perhaps think a little bit more, not only in terms of development cooperation, but also there, how can we cooperate with respect to third parties? There is a relationship between India, for example, the UAE and Israel, but I could also imagine similar relationships which we could build up for Africa, for example, and also other parties of the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Before I give Mohammed the word, I would just mention something. When we were children, we hear a grandmother or mother referring that if they want to describe anything that's very good, they're always saying it's German. But we don't know what is it. But always they're saying it's Germany. Mohammed.
Thank you very much. I think I will follow up on the ambassador's point of view, which I think is very important. The idea is to expand the view. It's not only about the bilateral. And the point at essence is the agreement that has been signed recently between UAE, Jordan, and Egypt, which is industrial at heart. It's about industry. And I think there's an area where you can look into that type of development. But I will move also to the point that Jinzia made. And I would say, Jinzia, if you start thinking of this as one or, it's always the wrong approach. The way the UAE looks at things, it's interconnected. So developing a relationship with China does not take away from developing a relationship with anyone else. And I think the connectivity that Ambassador Zilberg mentioned is, again, very important. But also, there is something else that is possibly on the European side. The difference between Europe for us and China is that China has a global project. And that global project is materialized in something called the Belt and Road. And we are, tagging ourselves as other countries are tagging. What does Europe have as an equivalent? Now we're just talking about UAE-German. EU is looking at GCC, but there is nothing even as close as a global initiative that is economic at essence. So that would always make China at a better position. And Russia does not have that. The US does not have that. Only China has got it. So that's why this is a way of us looking at it not as an equivalent, not as better. It's available. It's part of the market, and we need to be part of it. Thank you.
Excellent point, Mohammed. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. And thank you for hosting this very great conference. It shows that dialogue is really a key to understanding each other and developing things forward. When I came here with Chancellor Schröder as a spokesman in 2004, we thought we were kind of early in establishing a strategic dialogue, only to find out that when I had the chance to talk with two of the people that were accompanying us, two famous German horse breeders, Paul Schockemöller and Ludwig Beerbaum, telling us the story how they came to this beautiful country in the 1970s and 1980s. We thought we were kind of late, actually. So there's always somebody who's more early than we were actually here, and they really showed us what was at stake here and the opportunities. And I was glad that Mr. Hinterdobler pointed out the great chances that there are in this dialogue also in Munich, where I also live at the moment and for a couple of years. Because in Munich, you have some components that you also have here that were kind of the success story for the Silicon Valley. You have the capital that is needed for great startups, you have the entrepreneurs, the startups, and you have great and big companies, and obviously you have great universities there with the technical universities and also the state Ludwig Maximilian University. All the components you put into practice here, and that make great entrepreneurs and great developments in the country. But one thing that struck me was what you said, Dr. Al-Ketbi, which I totally agree upon, but which isn't, at least in our country at the very moment, that popular. So it's all about interest in politics and being a fond, follower of real politics. I truly believe in this, but we have sort of the notion, and some questions indicate this here, talking about China, for example, that it's also about emotion, especially in the media landscape, at least in some Western societies, and these emotions are really transported into politics as well. So it is very important to explain yourself and explain yourself and explain yourself, explain the interests you have and where they will lead to. But what struck me in this sentence, on this context was Ambassador Ali Ahmad said concerning your country and the way we sometimes a bit arrogantly look upon this. You said it took a war for Germany to realize how tough our neighborhood is. And this is absolutely true. I mean, and my hope is that through this dialogue, but also through the recognizing on hard your situation is and was in the last centuries and in the last decades, that you have to enable yourself to defend yourself as well, to be able to develop, not stand still, but also take this further in the future. So by saying this, there's also, talking about economics, a great chance also for the UAE. We talked about all the futuristic things that you are very fond upon, the AI and also the development, also your financial industry, the health industry. But also there's a great chance at the very moment because with the high energy costs, even the rising labor costs in Germany, a lot of companies are looking into new grounds where they can put their highly skilled production to the chemical industry, for example, the fertilizer industry, that will undoubtedly make a change in the next couple of years with their production sites, which is not liked, but talking about realpolitik, which will be the case. So since China might not be a place for them to move to, they will look upon other regions where they can do this. And maybe this is an input as well to establish this dialogue also, if that is an area that is of interest for you. So thank you very much again for hosting this great conference, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. In EPC, we always talk frankly. So I'm sorry, we don't, and we cannot. Me myself, I cannot be a diplomat. Tobias.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to emphasize that I think that there are especially opportunities for sustainable cooperation between both countries. I mean, we have already mentioned that the European Union and Germany is the major trading partner. We have the European Green Deal. We have this new EU Gulf joint communication paper, and I think that we should think of aligning projects, investments into this broader frameworks that are now in place. And just two things here. So one question would be that, especially in the European Green Deal, there's a lot of emphasis on a circular economy. And I would like to know whether there are also some initiatives, ideas here in the UAE concerning a circular economy approach. The other point is that one thing that hasn't been mentioned in the Green Deal, but not so much in the joint communication paper, and I think that this would be one point which tackles actually a lot of our challenges, such as public health, clean energy, but also the environmental issues, and this is air pollution. So I don't know if you're aware about this fact, but in the past, Germany has been sued by the EU Commission for their high level of air pollution. I think that you in the UAE have also some challenges in this regard due to aviation, due to the traffic. So I think there are a lot of similarities between both countries. And I think lastly to say this, that especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we all have recognized how important a clean air is and what does it mean when we have all these lockdown measures and so on, and we can also benefit from this. So we should also think about more what can we do in having a better air quality. Thank you.
Thank you, Tobias. Ambassador Ali.
Thank you, Dr. Ebtesam. Like it when you said you're not a diplomat, you made it sound like if you're a diplomat, you have to hide something. I would say, sometimes a diplomat needs to rephrase more than that. I would like to go to the question or to the point raised by Sebastian, which is about the sports investment and maybe club ownership. We all know the restriction maybe in Germany because of the 50+ fan base ownership, etc. but coming from you, is that a window? Is there is an opening? Maybe Mr. Hinterdobler would tell us if there's something new happening and mention Byron. Maybe we'll get the breaking news or something.
The last, Sebastian, I will give Dr. Yusuf Al-Hassan.
I would like to express my views in Arabic.
I'm not an economist, but I do believe that economy and politics work together in parallel in all times and in all circumstances. I do know, based on my studies, that the German people is serious. The people of Germany are not very good in joking, or maybe they don't incorporate it in their daily habits. But because of what we hear, the question is this astonishment about these relations between UAE and China. So China with the United Arab Emirates and other countries in the region. I would like to point out that Europe has realized, and when we say Europe, we say Germany, they realized that there should be no total dependence on Russia in energy. So, by analogy, would like to say that we do not want to realize in the future that we depend only on the West, on Europe only. It's why we diversify the partnerships pragmatically and the friendships as well, including the friendships and the diplomatic cultural ties that we will tackle in the next sessions. This is one. Number two, we talk about the private sector in the economy and the investment area, but we do not talk about the role of the government in the empowerment of the economy and leading the economic initiatives. When you talk, dear colleagues, about Africa, we talk about a market only. China doesn't talk about Africa as a pure market, but we have to link this market with the problems that are existing in Europe and in the Gulf, in the Middle East. The demands of investing in Africa. Have we ever thought about the causes of these earthquakes, of refugee waves to Europe? Do we have a project of investment in Africa in a way that decreases the migration and the refugee from Africa to Europe? Because there were several experiences in Europe, and there are populist movements in Germany that they do not want the increase of refugees and migrants. How can we work together while we go in parallel with the market trends in order to face the extremism that exists in in Africa? The agendas in economy alone, without other calculations that are related to empowering the prosperity in Africa, the development in Africa, we should take that into account. We should not consider Africa only as a pure market, but we should solve its other problems. It's why I say that to comment on the question why you focus on China, for instance, or Russia, or something like that. Since you have the right to decide which partners are relevant to you, we have that right. You discovered that the Middle East is important to you as an energy market. So let us be serious, and we should acknowledge that since there is a dire need by Europe, that there is an important relation that should be sustained with the Gulf, so do we. And when we see that there were some projects that exhausted in the past some countries, we have to launch new initiatives that are creative in order to solve this crisis. And we have to work toward more stability in our economies, because we went through several crises, the nuclear crisis. And Dr. Kach talked and made a suggestion. He suggested to make the Middle East free of the nuclear and weapons of mass destruction. That is an initiative that is aged more than 40 years old. But the European countries and other countries did not do enough to work toward this objective. It is good that we hear such initiatives and suggestions by the German delegation. Let me talk about something else. Syria. UAE made several initiatives in order to restore stability in Syria. But now there are other instability sites. Some countries want to occupy again Syria, and some are trying to nurture the dormant cells in Syria. How can we reconstruct the destroyed places? Millions of children left their schools because of this crisis. Thank you very much, Dr. Youssef. Allow me to interrupt you.
Very brief comment on what you said, Ali. I think the 50+1 rule in Germany is out of discussion. So this will not change. What I was thinking about is, for instance, sponsorship deals. So in the past there was Emirates sponsoring Hamburg for when Hamburg was a little bit more successful than today. So maybe that could be also another entry point, but we can also discuss it in the lunch break or afterwards, because we are running out of time. But just to clarify that.
Thank you, Sebastian. Mr. Hunter, do you...
yes.
Yeah.
May I also have a remark? Mr. Hasan, you said you want to have the independence, not only Europe, not only China, not only USA. You want to cooperate with different areas. It's understandable, it's correct, it's good. But there are differences, I think. The role of states in the economy is very different between China and Europe and the United States. And we are all together in WTO, World Trade Organization. And the World Trade Organization is based on rules and on a small role of the states in the economy. Not a direct influence, should it be. China has a direct influence and a very strong rule of economic affairs by the state. That's a conflict. And this conflict is now leads to a lot of discussions. How strong is the basis of WTO? How strong will it be for the future? That's a conflict between United States and China, and this conflict is a little growing also between Europe and China. We don't have the same understanding from the role of the states in the economy. I think it's not a discussion here, but it's a discussion in WTO. It should be a discussion, but you should also see the different roles and the different opportunities for your country in the cooperation between these partners, I think, my remark.
Thank you, Dr. Otto. I'll give you the first and 5 minutes, and for Nasser.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Very interesting discussions, and at the crossroads between politics and economy, and how to organize our societies and how to organize the economies in the world economy. There is certainly around the globe a desire for all governments to have stable governments and to provide for the people. Stability is at the core of the Chinese interest, is at the core of also interest of African countries, which have more or less trouble with it, and stability is at the core of your interest in the region, and you want this. And of course we are also in the competition of how to organize societies and how to organize this. And it's very fair to say you can do it differently, and we have different history and we have to do this. But I think we should not forget that there are some things that are common to all of us. And as much as I like the realpolitik thing, and I think we should have more of this in Germany, Germans and Europeans may look a little bit silly because they do care about it. They do care. And the German population, the Bavarian population, I can tell you, they are asking questions. Say, okay, we can make a lot of money out of the deal with China, but we should not look the other way when it comes to human rights and other things. I think this has become more in the last decades, and with the younger generation of our children, a major concern. And this is not something bad, and this is not something that is from a last century, but this is also modern 21st century thinking. Every government has the right to have stability in their country. But there are some sets of universal rules where no religion, no state, and no interest would allow for treatment of people in a certain way. I think this is something that we should all agree on. And this goes also from state to state. So what Russia is doing right now in the middle of Europe should be of concern for all the world. And yes, it is a problem for us if other states around the world look the other way. And you are right in saying maybe, where were you Germans when we were talking about with Iran? You're right to do so. So you're right to remind us. But we should make sure that we also do not forget these beliefs and the outcome of the Second World War, which led to the refounding or the founding of the United Nations, and to have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all these things. And the Chinese are structurally trying to undermine all of these achievements. And I think with all the economic discussions, Germans now, they want to say, yes, we want to be part of this economy, but we are also looking at the price of human cost for it. And this is also a factor that we need to consider in our model, which which makes it difficult. It makes it sometimes difficult, and we should also have a dialogue about this. So this is a very serious part of the discussions that we're having. Now for sports. Sports is actually, it's very interesting. Bayern Munich, which is our club, of course, and I'm proud to say I have a season ticket since 1994. I have a season ticket for Bayern Munich. And Bayern Munich is thriving. Why? Because it has a sponsorship partnership, a long-term partnership with 3 companies who are truly Bavarian. This is Adidas, as you know. This is Audi, the manufacturing, and this is Allianz, the insurance companies. And also this, what you can also measure the weight of the German economy by the success of Bayern Munich in the Champions League, because it's the financial power that these 3 companies put in there is what it determines, but also what keeps the identity of the club, what keeps the identity. So the rule that Sebastian was mentioning, it's also a question of value. Are we ready to open up this model? And Bavaria, so far, the Bayern Munich club has always decided we would not sell out our identity to other ones. We accept to get out of the Champions League and not be. And when we look at now with envy, of course, to the Premier League and to others, and to Madrid and others, but we see at what price they have sold their soul to the Russians, Abramovich, and they have sold to the others. So this is something that we think we should not do. So there is not a price that we want to pay. And this was also, I make an analogy now to Europe. This is also where Europe seems weak now in certain matters, because we have given away some of the assets. And we know we need to re-strengthen defense and other things. But I ultimately believe, and I also think that this was also Chancellor Merkel's belief, and this is why she was so widely respected, the ultimate human goals that are bigger than this. And freedom and all of these things are values that will, at the long run, will outrun the others. At least this is my hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Nasser?
We talk about German industrial excellence. I just realized this is Bosch, you know. So
deliberately, we brought it.
Again, I mean, economy and politics will go hand in hand, but I try to stick to the economic side. Sebastian asked about rivalry. I think in the UAE, we are the most accustomed with rivalry. You know, 50 years ago, again, 7 Emirates were created. Each local emirate has its own aspirations, but we learned along the way when to compete and when to cooperate. As I speak here today, and you know, we're all here gathering here, I'm 100% sure that there is some sort of a project, a team in Abu Dhabi is working on it, and a different team in Dubai is working on it. Same project, you know. And each one wants to do a better job than the other. Okay, and this is how, you know, the Emirates was created. Each emirate has its own, you know, plan and. But we always knew, and again, that's by experience, you know, we always knew when to stop competing between each other and to, you know, to put the federal agenda above us all. Okay, one of them, you know, a recent, you know, experience was the Qatar boycott. You know, it had an implication on Dubai, which always was a hub for the region. Okay, but again, there was a national interest, a federal interest, and that at that time it was even beyond national, that there was a GCC interest along with Saudi and so on. So I mean, with rivalry, I think we welcome it. You know, we think it's a positive thing. It will trigger us to do more. The only worry there is that we have spent many years developing the GCC market. Okay, and if competition gets us into protective measures, you know, that will be a setback for the GCC market. If we start to, you know, hear UAE first or Saudi first or Bahrain first and so on, that will, you know, that will have its effect on the GCC market. So I think when it comes to competition, I mean, we welcome it. We would love for it to stay there all the time, you know, so it gets the best out of us, you know. Each one delivers at his, you know, the. You mentioned Bayern Munich and so on. I mean, you have an excellent league, and this is why Bayern Munich, you know, delivers. You know, you see the Bayern Munich players, you know, playing well, but you go put the best player, and we don't have any French here, like Messi. You put him in the, you know, in the French league, he's not performing as he was in Barcelona. That was a better league. So I mean, always competition gets the, you know, the best out of you. Again, China. I don't want to repeat. I think, I mean, China is a fact. It is here to stay. How do we deal with it? I mean, there should be an alternative. I don't think anyone in the world has a right to go to African countries and tell them don't deal with China. If you say that, give them the alternative. Okay? I was very happy to see Siemens, for example, taking that contract in Egypt for to upgrade the railroads, because that was a sector dominated by the Chinese throughout Africa. So instead of, I mean, again, it was said before, we're not here, you know, to hear lectures or lecture others. Yes, I mean, there are certain issues, but always give people the alternative. Don't tell them, do not do that, but give them the alternative to it. And thank you again.
Thanks for both our speakers and for the interventions and for all of you for the rich discussion, and also another award. This time, bigger bite is the lunch beside us here.